Hello, this is Hannah Benrow, VP of Marketing and Education at Coach Training EDU, to highlight the amazing work of coaches and to advance the coaching community and industry. We recently spoke with Manda Kelly. She is the Director of Academic Support and Accessibility at Spring Arbor University and is a current Coach Training EDU student. Manda is deeply committed to promoting equal access to education and focuses on serving students with disabilities at the graduate and undergraduate levels. Listen on to hear Manda's inspiring role in helping all students break barriers and foster a culture of empowerment. And with that, let's take a listen.
I'm the Director of Academic Support and Accessibility at Spring Arbor University. So within that role, I serve our students with disabilities, both at the graduate level and at the undergraduate level, regarding getting their accommodations in place for academic, any accessibility needs is through my office. And then I also teach a couple classes. So I work with any students coming in with a 2.9 GPA or below. They're required to be in my study skills course, which is a 3-credit class where I've embedded a lot of this information, this content into that class. And then I also teach a class for students on academic probation. And so that's another one where I have them in front of me weekly, where they have to be in front of me. So looking at embedding a lot of these concepts into the curriculum and then offering up the academic life coaching as well. So I also meet one-on-one with students all the time who are on academic probation or just any students who are wanting to meet with me. I offer that up. So constantly meeting with students. And so when I first saw the syllabus for Coach Training EDU, a lot of the content, it looked like stuff I was doing within my classes, but going so much deeper and a more creative lens. And so I'm really excited to I've been actually in the process I'm halfway through the program right now. So I was kind of teaching my current class while learning the new concepts. So kind of integrating it as I go, but I'm actually drafting my new syllabus for the fall and totally have restructured it. We're going to do the assumption chart. We're going to do core motivation. We're going to do inner critic, future self. So all of those things are now going to be embedded into that curriculum, which I'm really excited about.
Oh, that's so cool. This is exactly the vision and mission I had 15 years ago. Hey, this will be the impact of this work. And here it is.
Here we are. Yeah.
What was the moment for you when so what are the biggest light bulbs? What are the things that you're like, oh, this has shifted, the territory?
Yeah, I think the ways in which I ask questions and the intuition piece has just taken my coaching sessions to a different level. And for some of my students where it would be, they were maybe required to meet with me, they'd be a quick touch base. They weren't giving me very much. The person who I work with, she was like, for some of the students while I was taking this class, they're like, what changed? They were in there for so long with you. And I'm like, I know. It's basically just asking the right questions and learning to not talk so much. And so I have seen the value of just my one-on-one meetings, just going so much farther with students. And I think it's because of the autonomy they feel, the motivation. When I have students on probation, it's 50% of I would say even 75% of the time, it's not because they necessarily don't know how to study. It's because they don't want to study. It's more of this motivation management of anything. And so this has been my key, I feel like, to helping motivate students. That has been my biggest barrier as I'm working with students. So I think just from a structural standpoint, I'm definitely seeing how it's going deeper. I'll share a story though, if that's okay. So
Yeah, that's great.
I think this kind of gives an example of with this student, maybe a different area lens I would have taken it prior to coaching versus after coaching. So right now I'm meeting weekly with a graduate student. She does have different disabilities, so anxiety, ADD, and she's high functioning on the autism spectrum. So those different types of pieces coming and looking at how can we coach her with some of her motivation aspects. And so I have been working with her for I don't know, at this point, I had 4 sessions with her, so 4 hours roughly. And all I heard her talking through this was just her love for why she wants to be a counselor one day, why she wants to be a therapist, why this is what she's always wanted to do it, but how school is a little bit hard for her. And then all of a sudden, during this 5th coaching session, she got an email from her instructor saying, "Hey, you're failing my class right now." And she texted me, "Hey, I'm going to drop the program. I'm done." And so we had a session, and I just said, "Hey, student, what's going on?" She goes, "Oh, I just want to burn it all to the ground. Like, I just want to be done. I want to burn it all to the ground. I want to go be a teacher now. I'm just kind of done with this." So I think prior to coaching, I maybe would have been like, "What are you doing? Like, this isn't what you want." And no, that's not a good option. You only have 1 year left of this 3-year program. And that logically doesn't make sense. And I probably would have talked a lot at her. But because of the coaching experience, I asked her the question. I said, "All right, students, so as you say, burn it all to the ground, what I'm envisioning is like a house. And I want you to kind of tell me, what does that house look like on the inside? What's inside of it? What does it look like? What are you burning to the ground?" And she went on to she explained it really beautifully, really vividly, what this house looked like. It kind of felt like a therapy room, what she wants her future therapy room to look like, the setting, all of these things. And so then I just asked her, I was like, "So let's burn it to the ground. What does it feel like when you're watching it burn?" And she said, it feels like I'm burning down all my hopes and dreams." And so it was just this totally different conversation that I never would have asked her that question in that way prior to coach training. And it was her own realization of that. And then she said she ended up actually completing a couple of the missing assignments for that instructor. And she was like, she even said, she goes, "I don't know what magic this was, but something worked here. And I'm doing some assignments." And so I meet with her next week. We'll see how she ends up doing with that. But I think that's a really powerful example of why this is so important, and just how it works.
I don't know what other context or what other modality would prompt a student to have that kind of conversation.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Ah,
Like, it feels like that is the coolest
yeah.
because that
Right.
changes lives.
It
That's
does.
not a small thing.
Yeah.
Where do you before and after coaching, what was the key moment or like the things that you felt like developed your own intuition?
It was always there. Intuition is always there.
Sure,
But
sure.
so often I think we're thinking of our next question as someone's talking. And
Mhm.
so it kind of overshadows our intuition, I think. And so for me, it's just been like, how can I visualize literally what they're saying? Like, how can I try to visualize it? And then I basically say, "Hey, this is what I'm seeing." And then the student can say, yeah, that's right on, or maybe not. But for me, it's just a creative process of just kind of this blank slate and just trying to almost paint this picture of what the student is saying and visualizing it, and then kind of going with my gut there. I didn't so much do that as much because I think I was almost cutting that part off with just thinking of talking too much or thinking too much about my next question.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that lands. Man, my perspective on tuition, everyone has it. It's a ubiquitous trait, but some people don't trust it or they don't know how to access it.
Yeah.
And I think what you described is, I mean, that is the first step. Like, it's deep listening,
Yeah.
trusting the listening too.
Yeah.
How has leadership responded? Because I imagine that this is having an impact on things in leadership. This thing. So, what magic? What are you employing? I mean, this is brand new. This is what 3 months into it, so it's still there.
It's brand new. I'm still kind of shaping what that looks like. So like I said, right now I'm working on my syllabus, and you'll see if I were to show you my syllabus for the fall, a lot of it is embedded. So there's that aspect of it. I'll be interested to seeing marking. I mean, leadership wants to see retention,
Right.
in numbers and data. And then I'll be able to provide the story behind that. So next year is the year I'm hoping to really build more of a story of what is it, here are my numbers of students who actually had coaching, from the fall through the end. Okay, because right now, yes, I did coach some students, but I was also being trained at the same time. So I was kind of this, I don't know if my numbers, having that data yet, but I think having the data, I believe it will show. Absolutely. And so being able to show why this is important from a retention standpoint, from a persistent standpoint will be important. But also, I think I've talked to my supervisor about, we're a small school, we're a small institution. We have one counselor for our, 1,200 students. And so there are a lot of students that do need that counseling, like going from that non-functioning to functioning piece absolutely is completely there. But there's a lot of students who are functioning, but they're not thriving. And so I think looking at how can coaching maybe bridge some of that gap to help with those students who maybe need more of a coach than a counselor would be another piece as well.
Yeah, it's not really the purpose of coaching and counseling are
Right.
they're different and they work really well together.
Yeah.
They each benefit from the other.
Yeah.
So where do you see this growing? Because I imagine, Spring Arbor is looking at this thinking, okay, like we have one person doing this, look at the retention numbers. Imagine if we had 5.
Right.
At what point do you feel like where does this start to gain momentum to be a larger, let's say, culture shift for the university?
For sure. I was just on a Zoom call today with some other folks from my class as we're trying to think through how to make that a bigger culture shift. And, I think for one, right now it's just me going through this process, but I think getting like all of our advisors potentially trained in this area would be a big one. Faculty as well. Just I think really anyone could benefit from having this, having these tools with our students.
Yeah, I view it as basic human training at this point.
Right. Right.
We have a 16-year-old, she took it, like she just finished.
Yeah.
Like, good, get that basic human training complete.
For sure. For sure.
In terms of like your biggest surprises, because I'm always kind of curious too, like, pre-coaching to post after coaching, like what were some of the misconceptions that you see a lot of, like either like the most common misconceptions people have of coaching, and then what was the journey to, oh, this is what it's really like?
I think that the emphasis on that person being the expert, and it's not me being the expert, is the big shift. Okay. It's not like me trying to coach. Like sometimes when you think of a coach, you think of that soccer coach who's the expert at coaching. So he's going to tell everyone what to do.
Yeah.
And they're going to listen. So, I'm an instructor, I teach. And so I do, in a sense, get up there and tell everyone what to do. Right. And so it's that aspect of, nope, that's not coaching actually. And I think people get this misunderstanding of what coaching is because the coach tells people what to do. Coaching is you trying to pull out of that person what they already know, but they haven't had the time or space to verbally process it yet. And so I think that's kind of the difference. It's just me trying to become and like understand what it's like to be you and understand your perspective and listen so well that I can ask the right questions so that you can get there. And that takes a lot of energy. Like when I think about a coaching session, that was my biggest advice I got from Hannah Finrow, my coach training person, is like, don't do back-to-back coaching sessions because you're bringing a lot of energy. Like there's a lot of energy in that. You know what I mean? And so like really thinking through how can I make sure I'm doing that space so that I can give that energy to that person is I think really important of just fully being there.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me is, I think the biggest misconception is it's not about me really at all. It's about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really that empowerment basis of delivery of value, like how it all shifts, from a knowledge basis. So what do you feel like is next? Like where does this go? Like 2 or 3 years now, like for you as a person, like where 2 or 3 years from now, where do you see yourself and how does this play out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think still implementing it here at Spring Arbor, absolutely. Maybe getting some other folks on board with the training process. Institutionally, I think it's super beneficial. I have a huge passion for graduate level students with disabilities. I think that's a huge, there's a lot of naturally embedded student success pieces for our traditional students coming in, right? Our undergrad students. regardless if you have a disability or not, there's student success advisors. There's this whole department a lot of times at most institutions for that. When you get to the graduate level, there's not a ton of that. There's not any of that. It's this preconceived notion of you've done this before, you're a graduate level student, you should know how to manage your time, you should know how to study. No one's going to baby you through that, right? And so having this, for me, I have a huge passion for specifically working with graduate level students with disabilities. For tons of different reasons. One, to empower them. To, a lot of times when you think of maybe a graduate or a student with a disability figured out their time management for their bachelor program, but maybe now they have 3 kids and a job, and now time management looks a little bit different. Or I work with a lot of students, graduate level students, who maybe they had a traumatic brain injury. They didn't even have a disability during their undergrad, and now they do. Disability is like the largest minority in the United States. You know, we have 57 million Americans with disabilities. It's such a spectrum. It's literally any physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. So that's chronic health, mental health, physical health, learning disabilities, social interactions. There is such a huge umbrella there, and so little support, I feel like, once you get to that graduate level. So,
Yeah.
and my job is all about accessibility, right? I'm always looking at how can we remove barriers for these students, the physical barriers, maybe attitudinal barriers for faculty with training, any type of barrier for our students to be able to come in and demonstrate what they know. So when I think about it from a coaching standpoint, I flip it a little bit to think about it as, how can I help this student access their ability? Because so many times our students with disabilities, I find, have had so many different, almost this web of oppression that they're dealing with societally, right? We have there's like 4 different types of oppression. There's this ideological oppression. So when you're thinking about that for a student with a disability, it's this idea that that person isn't going to succeed as much as someone who doesn't have that, right? It starts with this ideological oppression that then in an interpersonal oppression, maybe a teacher or a parent or a peer says something to them that makes them believe they can't do something. And then there's institutional oppression, the policies that are put in place for just the majority, not thinking about our students with disabilities. All of those lead up to this internalized oppression, where I have so many students in front of me say, I'm just not book smart. I'm just not this. And they really believe that about themselves. And then, we go through that assumption chart. Like, let's look at what happens when you believe you're just not book smart. What filter do you put on top of that? What's the emotion? Like just negativity, and going into the action. Well, then I don't want to study because I don't have the motivation. And so really for me, it's all about, I have this passion, this dream of just access your ability. How can we help people access their own ability? Because I believe like our students with disabilities can absolutely change the world. A lot of times, like they're passionate about something in a way that they can have empathy even deeper than someone who doesn't. Someone with a chronic health disability is going to be an amazing nurse or someone in the healthcare field one day because they're going to get it, and there's superpowers to our disabilities. And so helping them understand that, I think, is just something that I had this dream, this idea in the next few years that I really want to implement for those people.
That is awesome. It's so sweet to hear your passion around this. And I totally understand and track with the idea of people who have had to deal with those webs. When they break through them, they become that much stronger. It just becomes like literally their superpower. I can't help but go coachy mode on this. So what do you call for yourself that, let's call it that furnace? The idea is to have a fire burning so bright, so big that the fire just consumes it, uses it as fuel. What do you call your furnace? Like, what do you like that passion? Like, what name have you given it? Like, what name do you want to give it? Because it's there and I believe in it, like, and I want to have a handle for it. Yeah.
The name would be Judah James Kelly. That's my son.
Okay.
He'll actually be 3 on Monday. And so
fun.
I know. So I've had this passion for working with people with disabilities. I mean, my undergrad is in special ed. I've been doing this for years, but, I had my son, 3 years ago. And so he does he's dealing with disabilities. He's dealing with developmental delays, just some different types of issues, just with his brain and the way it was developed, some abnormalities that occurred for him when he was born. And so Judah James Kelly is my fire because, it's at this point, it's not.
What are his initials?
JJK.
JJK.
Yeah, JJK.
All right, that's who we can call it that, right?
We
Like,
can
that's the
absolutely
furnace.
call it that. Now it's, whenever I have a student in front of me, I think, what would it mean if Judah was in front of me? What would I want to do for my son? And so it's just, your intuition was right on there. Because I've literally said Judah is what set my passion on fire. Like it was there. And now I'm just like, I have to change the world for him. So yeah.
I feel like there's a whole other special section of the brain that gets connects when you have a child. You're like, okay,
yeah,
the game has changed.
Absolutely.
So with that, what makes that fire burn bigger? What makes JJK go bigger?
I think believing in this, I know that this is so important. I never want Judah to feel like he can't do something, right? Or set those own limitations on himself. And right, we can tell people that all the time, but people need to believe it about themselves. And a lot of times we create fixed mindsets. We all do this. We all have fixed mindsets about ourselves that we all have to untangle that web every day. Like we all have to do this work. Right. So I think for me, it's figuring out a way to get the message out for people to want to embark on this journey. I think a lot of people don't even know what coaching is. They don't want to, what am I putting the time aside for and all of these things, but investing in yourself and loving yourself and trusting yourself is a hard process to take the time to do that. So often we don't. And so for me, it's just that next step is figuring out how do I get that message out for more people. So that's my biggest barrier, I would say, to try to figure out.
In what ways in your life have you found fixed mindset to be useful?
A fixed mindset or a growth mindset?
Yeah. Like, how can you make friends with fixed mindset too? Yeah.
I know. That's a good question. Maybe wanting to prove it wrong. Maybe this, this idea of, well, that will never work. Like, I guess a fixed mindset maybe would be, well, how am I ever going to get graduate level students with disabilities to even know what I do and want to sign up for that? I mean, I have this dream, but it kind of sometimes can feel like a pipe dream a little bit of just how do I even get that message out? And so that would be a fixed mindset. And so trying to think through like that, the competitive nature piece of like, well, I want to go up against that. Like I want to fight that a little bit comes out.
You can use it as a foil.
Yeah.
Like an opponent.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of the way I felt when I first found coaching. And I thought, this is going to totally revolutionize education.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And it's not that education needs that much, to be completely amazing. It just requires the tiniest of mindset shifts. Like you're saying again and again, it just felt like the cat that swallowed the canary. It's like, hey, everyone, this stuff is awesome. Like, why are we all not doing this? Like
I said, motivation is the main barrier, I think, for students.
Right.
Just not being motivated. I hear it all the time, especially coming out of COVID. Oh my goodness, right? Like, I see it all the time in admissions essays of students just feeling, I see it. It's like the same essay I see all the time. And so how do we motivate students? Well, they need to figure out a way to motivate themselves. How do we do that? And I feel like coaching is the answer that I'm really needing because it's hard. I actually you'll see it says mindset is everything back here. Like I teach a study skills course, but I don't even start teaching study skills until I teach on mindset. Because for me, I'm like, I can give you the best research and study skills in the world, but if you don't want to be here and you have a fixed mindset, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So we have to start there.
So true. That's so true. I think that there's such an element of, well, okay, so like coaching, right? So people take coach training and then they go out and they set out their practices. And best practice is to have a very specific target audience, but within that target audience, then there's a general, like there's a very specific expertise that can then be regeneralized.
Yeah.
Like, so working with students, I found I had to become an expert in motivation.
Yeah.
And that's the name of the game. And then you realize, wait, the whole world's dealing with this.
Yeah.
Motivation. What have you found in the students you worked with in your own life? Like, what is the thing? What is that one piece of motivate? Like, what's that usual thing that usually turns it for them?
I think helping them restructure their idea of what learning is a really important one. I think separating their identity from it. The question I asked my students on the first one is like, at what age were you when you felt like your worth was tied to a test score? Like, how old were you?
5.
And yeah, so many of them are like, oh, first grade, oh, kindergarten, second grade.
Yeah, I guess when you start to get the grades back, and you're like,
Yeah, and we think, oh, our worth is that. Okay? And that's the narrative we tell ourselves from age 5 till 18, and now we're here. And we've also we're in a system where maybe we do something called, learning styles too. Like maybe you've only been taught the read, write learning style. That's amongst like the lowest preferred learning style. Most of us are a little more kinesthetic, auditory, visual. And then they learn that, and then they're realizing, oh, like maybe learning was a little bit misunderstood for me. And maybe I can do this. Right. And so it's restructuring that. It's kind of looking at that system in general. Like the title of my first class is Learning is Misunderstood. And them understanding that, I think, is big. And then getting to know students enough to kind of, once I know what their learning style is, it can be really helpful. Like I was doing a coaching session with a student where she's like, I'm not book smart. I'm not good at reading this. I'm horrible at these assignments. I'm 15 assignments behind in this class. I have to read this chapter and then I have to write about it. This is just not me. This isn't my learning style. I can't do it. And I had her in my class, and in my class, we do Socratic seminars where they have to read 40 pages, write about it, and then talk about it for 30 minutes with each other. And I was like, well, hey, student, how did you feel about Socratic seminars? She goes, I loved Socratic seminars. Those were awesome. I had no problem with comprehension. And then I said, well, you know that this is just a Socratic seminar, right? Like, this is a Socratic seminar. And then she was like, what? I guess you're right. We're just reading about it. We're writing about our opinions. I was like, yeah. And it just restructured it to take it from a read-write learning style to a more kinesthetic, right? She had to think about if I was in a conversation, and then she knocked out 15 assignments in like a week, and she just got it done. So it was never an issue if she can't do this. She was fully capable, but she didn't believe she was capable, and therefore she was about to fail a class. Once she believed she was capable, because she is, she knocked it out of the park. So I think the motivation piece goes back to a student believing that they're capable.
Yeah, I mean, it's just hope theory. I mean, it's just exactly there. Yeah, it's reframing, restructuring of even what the objective is.
Yeah.
What are you trying to do here? Like, yeah, shifting a goal, away from an outcome to a process. It's amazing. Appreciate your time on this. It's so fun to hear.
Yeah.
Anything else that you want my audience to know?
I don't think so. Thanks so much.
Super rad. But yeah, thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate you having me.